You could be way more than you are, incomparably more than you are. A year and a half ago, I had just got out of jail and I was homeless. And he said, I've started listening to your lectures. I got married this year, I have a child, and I just bought my apartment. That just happens over and over. And the mainstream media that's been covering what I've been doing, it seems like everything that constitutes news in our society has to be political and group oriented. For young people in particular, it's actually a very depressing message for young people to hear that it's time for them to get involved in political activism. Because any young person who has any sense knows perfectly well, especially if they're 18 or so, 19 years old, is they don't know a damn thing. You know, they haven't started a business, they haven't started a family, they don't have a permanent relationship, they're not educated, they don't have any experience. And for someone to come and say, well, you're in a position to change the world, is nothing but a way of disenchanting them with adult wisdom. It's like, you're not ready to change the world. You've got a lot to learn, but you can learn it. And in learning it, you'll become much more powerful and much more charismatic and much more articulate and much more wise and sensible. And that's the way forward to being much more than you are. And young people, of course, when you're 18 and you have 60 years of life ahead of you, what you want to hear above all else is that there's way more of you yet to come. Because what else are you going to do with those 60 years? So it's a message, it's a harsh message because it says, well, you're not everything you could be, but it's a deeply optimistic message because the idea is that you could be way more than you are, incomparably more than you are. And I do believe that. And what's so fun about this is that people keep telling me that it's true. You know, I have endless people. I got one kid come up to me the other day. It was so fun. He said, a year and a half ago, I had just got out of jail and I was homeless. And he said, I've started listening to your lectures and I got married this year, I have a child, and I just bought my apartment. It's like, wow, man, good work. You know, and you did that in a year and a half. And, you know, I was in LA about a month ago, and you know, I was in a rough part of LA, downtown LA near the Apollo Theater, and I'd given a talk there. My wife and I were walking down the street, and this car pulled up, and this kid hopped out. He was about 19 or so, good-looking Hispanic kid, ran over and asked me if I was Dr. Peterson. I said yes, and he was all excited. He said he'd been watching my videos for about a year and a half, and that they'd really helped him straighten out his life. He was just smiling away. He said, wait a minute, and he ran back to his car, and he came back out with his dad. And his dad was standing there, you know, and they had their arms around each other, and they were just grinning like mad. And the kid said, look, I've really put my relationship together with my father, and we're really on board with this together. And they were just like so happy, you couldn't believe it. And that just happens over and over. Like, it happens, I would say, 4 or 5 times a day in restaurants or in airports. It's so good. And the mainstream media that's been covering what I've been doing, you know, they just miss this completely because it seems like everything that constitutes news in our society has to be political and group oriented. And this isn't political, and it's not group oriented. What I'm trying to do as a good clinical psychologist, and perhaps a good educator, and I mean good, striving to be good in the moral sense, is to help people develop as individuals. And they are, and it's really working. And it's a thrill to be on this tour because that's all I hear. And no one talks to me about the political issues, or very, very rarely. And it's all, because I also think that the battle against collectivism, let's say, the battle against identity politics, isn't to be had in the political realm. Maybe that's a secondary issue. The way that you fight for the sovereignty of the individual is by getting your act together and right locally, right where you are, and starting to take advantage of everything that you have in front of you. And you do no harm that way. All you do is make yourself less bad. What's the harm in that? That's a good thing. The whole argument is about what's the primary unit of analysis. That's everything. What's the primary unit of analysis? And in the West, the primary unit of the analysis has been the logos, and that's something like divine individual consciousness. And it's on that ground that we developed our idea of individual sovereignty and citizenship. And, you know, we don't talk about a citizen as someone who adopts the responsibilities of an ethical being. That's a citizen. We don't talk about that even in schools, and tell people that, look, the meaning in your life is going to be found. It's going to be proportionate to the degree that you take responsibility for positively shaping your experience and the experience of the people around you. And this isn't like be good in some weak, be inoffensive and harmless sense. It's not that at all. It's like, get your spine straight, get your aggression integrated, pick a heavy goal, like a heavy high goal, something you can barely tolerate lifting, and struggle along with it. And that's where you'll find your self-respect. And people know that. It's fun to watch the working class guys respond to this too, you know, because they know this. Most of those guys work like mad, you know, and they know that there's nobility in that, and there is. And so it's well, and people also say, well, that they're happy to come to my lectures or even read the book because I'm helping them find words to express things that they already knew to be true. And those things that they know to be true are the bedrock axioms of our culture. And one of the things we got right in the West was the idea of the sovereign, responsible individual, not the person with rights, and certainly not the person with rights granted to them by the state. That's not part of the English common law tradition. You're the locus of rights, but only in some sense because you're the locus of ultimate responsibility. And I guess part of what I've been trying to tell people is that there's no difference between meaning and responsibility.